Welcome back, everyone, to the latest rendition of the Batmaning of. It's the Batman movie that is so good, I am taking it as the concept and basis for every other character in the DC universe, and I'm giving them a movie similar to the style and ideas that are presented in the Batman. This time around, we are talking about the Green Lantern, Hal Jordan. Okay, this is an interesting one. And when I started to sit down and really think about it, I'm like, how do you really honestly talk about the Green Lantern mythos and do a Hal Jordan story? At this point in the entire concept and in just the idea of the Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan seems like a relic. But the reason I wanted to start with Hal Jordan is the reason I wanted to start with Barry Allen. You have to base it on something. And you can't really base it on Alan Scott because he's not really connected to what this universe is going to be. He's an off-brand character doing his own thing. Hal Jordan is the baseline for these characters. He's the first. He's arguably not the best. I personally like him more than some of the other Green Lanterns just because that was my era. I respect all the other ones for various reasons, but Hal Jordan to me represents a certain part of the DC universe, kind of like that same aspect that Barry Allen represents, and that is, he is of this time, he works best in this time, this kind of like Silver Age, interesting, canonical version of himself that could really be interpreted in any sort of way. As opposed to some of the other heroes we've talked about, there's a certain edge towards a Hal Jordan character. He is gruff, he's a little arrogant. I wouldn't say arrogant, but cocky. He's confident. He's sure of himself in a way that some of these other characters aren't sure of themselves. There's no really humor behind a Hal Jordan character. He is headstrong. He is going to do the job in the way that he sees fit. It's not going to be for the benefit of the people. It's going to be in a way it's like, hey, we walk into battle. I know what I'm doing here, so I'm going to enact my own vision according to that. He's confident. He is in charge of any situation he walks into while still being a team player. And that's an interesting dynamic that could sometimes get overlooked for a character like this. His place in the DC universe is very middling. You could look at him as like the architect of the Green Lantern mythos. He's the one that came first, but arguably the one who has as little impact on the story as the other ones do. So there's kind of just like a necessity to him where it's like he could be seen as a couple different things. When I talked about Barry Allen, I talked about like the most important moment in Barry Allen's history kind of being when he died in Crisis. You could look at like the most important Hal Jordan story being when he goes crazy and kills everyone. Because what else is there to Hal? The character that you could see, he is kind of charming, kind of arrogant. That could be done by other characters. There's not really the necessity for this to be Hal Jordan, but he is that key figure. He recognizes you, you recognize him. He's going to be a part of the world no matter what you do or how you string that story. He's an important character. Even if his story isn't like the most prominent in his world, he's somebody you have to see no matter what happens, because that is how you know there is a progression in these things. He is more, and when I talked about Green Arrow, I should say, he is more conservative. He sees the world a certain way, very much that militaristic tendency as opposed to other characters we are going to talk about. He is just confident in this certain ideology. Kind of like if you were to emulate a mix of John Walker from the Captain America mythos with the ideologies of Steve Rogers. He's a good guy, but maybe sometimes that goodness comes across as a little bit brash and stupid and reckless. That is just a part of his character. And you have to accept that for what it is. Now, when I talk about my favorite Green Lanterns, I honestly don't really go to this mythos a lot. I like the expanded world behind it. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff you could play with in this world. And I think Hal Jordan does represent the start of that. He's the one we've known forever. People know Jon Stewart, they know Guy Gardner and Kyle Rayner, but Hal's the one that the general audience is like, yeah, that guy, Ryan Reynolds playing him. He's your key figure. He's not the most important figure, and that's the important thing I want to get across in a Hal Jordan film. He is just a footnote in a larger story. He's the kind of guy you're like, oh yeah, this is like my dad. This is the guy I know. He's like my family member that I respect and admire, but he's not the guy I want to hang out with. I'm like, yeah, he's kind of crazy and weird, but I'm not going to really like spend time with him. And when you have that as like the basis of your lead, it makes for some compelling stuff that could be a little bit disheartening to some people. Personally, Hal Jordan is my favorite Green Lantern. It's kind of the Barry Allen thing. I was a Wally West guy. Like that's when I grew up and that's when I knew Wally was the Flash. But when it comes to the Green Lanterns, there's just so much to them, and I always just stuck around in that time frame when Hal Jordan was prominent. That was always when I started to read it and get into the character. It's not a well I go down a lot, but when I do, Hal's the guy I like. And that's not taking offense to anybody else. That is just that Hal Jordan is my Green Lantern. And his place in the world is very interesting, and that's something I enjoy to see. And when we talk about the other interpretations of Green Lantern throughout film, there's only really one we have to talk about, and that is Ryan Reynolds playing the character in Green Lantern from 2011, 2009? I can't even remember when this film came out. This is an interesting one, and I could probably spend an entire time talking about this film. As it stands, I think it's mixed. I am not a fan of Ryan Reynolds, and I have a personal dislike of him that I really don't think he's funny or creative or talented in any regard of the word. But there's some things in that film I do admire. I think they did some good stuff with the design of the characters and the worlds, and maybe it was just like in the wrong time period when that came out, so that character couldn't be pushed right and couldn't really find their footing to do like that right thing. And that's kind of the problem. It wanted too much to be like an Iron Man character as opposed to a character that emulates more of what a Green Lantern should and act like. And that to me is why I think the actual tone of this film should follow something like Dredd. When we talk about the Batman, the thing everyone's talking about is this is like Chinatown. It's like the Maltese Falcon. It's like this certain type of film that emulates that. When it comes to making a Green Lantern film, I want it to emulate Dredd. I want it to feel like, okay, here's this guy, he's a cop on patrol, he's doing his job, he already is a part of this world, but maybe he's not the best at it. There's challenges lying ahead for him that he can't really face, or he doesn't really know how to apprehend or how to focus on. He is starting off strong, learning to find himself in this world without really being connected to it. The Green Lanterns are a military. They are a cop force. And I'm not trying to make a propaganda show where it's like, look what happens when you join the Navy or something. I just want to be like, this is intense. These are characters who have seen some stuff and operate on that basis of doing something they have been a part of forever. This isn't new to them. Even when we're starting off with a younger Hal Jordan, he's not new to this. He is still kind of a rookie. And that is basically the premise for my Green Lantern film. He's a rookie. He's a new Green Lantern who kind of like started off on Earth. He had his fun there. Where they're like, you have a whole sector to watch. You have to explore more than just that. And when that comes into play, we see a young man who comes off of Earth suddenly realizing there's a whole world he has to protect. Not just the one he's from, but galaxies and sectors of things he's never seen or heard of before. When it comes to my Green Lantern film, I wanted the villain to be somebody who could easily fit into the larger mythos of the Green Lantern narrative, while still being their own individual freak and weird character. I picked Larfleeze, and Larfleeze is the sole Orange Lantern who operates as avarice, the lantern emotion for greed. I think if you take, like, there's like some weird things in the galaxy that Larfleeze is after, leading him to commit murder and injure people across the sector that Hal Jordan is operating out of. You have kind of like this cat and mouse game of this guy looking to get one step ahead of what is it that Larfleeze is trying to find here, while showing himself as becoming a larger presence inside the Green Lantern Corps. You know, you can have Hal go to Oa and he's talking to the Guardians like, I know I can stop this guy. You do not have to call in Kilowog or any of these other guys to help me. I know I can stop him. I know I can find him. I just have to think like this. And Hal Jordan being an arrogant character, maybe he's going to think like a greedy man. Maybe he's actually going to find that thing that he is looking for. That is just so totally different than anything else we've really seen in a Green Lantern story on film. It's not trying to be funny. The character is arrogant and funny, and we're following this man who is so confident in his search that he knows he can do it, and with that comes the humility that is necessity for a character like this. It's just a simple game of cat and mouse. We were watching Judge Dredd climb up the stairs of a building to find the evil villain. We are watching Green Lantern go across a new planet he's never been on to find the man who is killing these creatures in order to be the greediest being in the world. That is how you make a Green Lantern movie, and that is how I want to start things off with this. Now, when it comes to the actual tone of my Green Lantern film, I kind of said I want to be more moody, more edgy, a little more rough around the edges. One of the most recent runs on Green Lantern that I read came from Grant Morrison and Liam Sharp doing this amazingly beautiful piece that was kind of satirical and just kind of like this really interesting cop idea. I want to find the balance between this guy is an asshole, but we love him, between this is a world that is dark and disturbing, and we are taking you, a fish out of water, from the earth that you know and love, and bringing you here. So when it comes to finding the director for this film, I looked at a couple of the most recent pieces in the MCU, and I'm like, hey, these guys are talented, why don't they do it? That is Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead. They have been doing some amazing stuff on Moon Knight recently, and I'm like, if you put that energy into a big atmospheric space thing, it would look incredible. These guys could commit to a brilliantly beautiful piece, just doing these amazing ideas and presenting such a compelling and fascinating story. And when you have these talented directors who can work in this moody setting, who can make it dark and edgy with that little bit of humility and honesty to it, you have to find an actor who's going to be able to do that right. I looked far and wide to find the right actor to capture the Hal Jordan essence that I'm looking for. I landed on Luke Thompson. Now, I'm not too familiar with this kid's work. I say kid even though he's older than me. But he is in Bridgerton, and if you are in Bridgerton, you are showing yourself as being a talented actor who can work in a weird studio setting. He's got the right look that's kind of like confident but dopey, and I think that's an important aspect that a character like this needs to represent. That is why I chose Luke Thompson for my Hal Jordan. And this to me is just the most different type of film for the Green Lantern mythos. People think it wants to be bright and colorful, it wants to be like Thor Ragnarok. It doesn't. Green Lantern at his core is a man in the army serving his duty, doing the right thing. That is the key you have to focus on. That is the angle you have to get right. That is how you do it. That is how you find it and how you properly execute it. And that is how you Batman up the Green Lantern. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. And if you have any suggestions for characters you'd like to see me talk about, please leave them in the comments below. I'd love to hear your feedback. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Have fun. Stay safe. Good luck.